Hey everybody, KMO here with one of the last unscripted out of my head videos for the year 2019. So today, two pieces of writing found their way to my eyeballs, both of them through my Gmail inbox. Both of these writers are people whose stuff I read regularly. One of them I've been following for years, and when I say years, I mean decades actually. So it's absolutely no surprise that either piece of media made it to my eyeballs, which is very much in line with the topic of both of these pieces of writing and with this video. So if you'll recall, on Christmas morning, I went to a friend's house for a friendly, non-family gathering, and there was a woman there who was about my mother's age, I would guess, and she was a Democrat from Texas, and she said that her dream was that the military would stage a coup and throw Donald Trump out of office. Wow. And I didn't really argue back against that, except just to ask her to double down on it, just to clarify, to say, wait, you really mean you would prefer military dictatorship to letting a democratically elected president serve out the remainder of his term, which is less than a year? And she said, yep. And I said, well, what happens after that? And she says, I don't know, don't care. That's what I want. Wow. To me, that is a bonkers position, but I guess to, certain demographics in certain parts of the country leaning in certain directions ideologically, that is fairly, I would hesitate to call it mainstream, but it's not crazy talk the way it is to my ears. So, the first piece of writing comes from Shelly Palmer. Shelly Palmer sends out a Sunday newsletter like clockwork. He is a organized and consistent person. And every Sunday I start to read his essay. Some Sundays I finish it, but not all Sundays. Well, today I not only finished it, there came a point where there was a paragraph, a short paragraph, like a couple sentences, that I thought needed to be expanded into a whole essay. And it's not. So I'm going to share that with you, but here's the setup. He went to a holiday festival gathering. He listed all the different festivals and, Christmas alternatives that people bandy about these days. And he said that the conversation turned to politics, as he knew it would, even though he did his best to deflect, the conversation to other non-political topics. And then he relates an interaction with an older woman who said that she was not affected by social media echo chamber, memes going viral, or, just ideological tides or centers of gravity. It doesn't affect her. So this is where I'm going to read from the piece. I'm not on social media, claimed one individual. I nodded and asked, do your friends or colleagues use the internet? Oh, I use the internet, she replied. I use it every day. I'm sure you know where this is going. She went on to tell me about what she reads and how she doesn't believe any of it. Then she went on to defend a specific political conspiracy theory that a 10-year-old could fact-check in 30 seconds. When I pointed this out to her with actual facts from my smartphone, from a source that she would trust, she said, "That's what you think. I know what I know." Where did her facts come from? Here's the bit that I think needs to be expanded into a whole essay. Forensically speaking, both direct and indirect network effects packaged in a self-reinforcing echo chamber designed to fuel confirmation bias. Sounds really concise and smart, doesn't it? I mean, it did to me when I first read it, and it still does. It still sounds concise and smart, just not fully spelled out, and I need it fully spelled out. So let's have a look at this. Direct and indirect network effects packaged in a self-reinforcing echo chamber designed to fuel confirmation bias. Okay, confirmation bias. Let's start there. That's the easy part. Unless we're trained to do otherwise, the natural inclination for most humans is to look for facts, look for evidence which confirms their worldview, and to discount those that don't, or that would speak against it. We all do it. Even those of us who have trained to, do otherwise, still do it a good deal of the time. And most people do it professionally. Well, I guess most people don't do it professionally, but most people who articulate a viewpoint professionally, who defend a particular worldview, they lean hard into confirmation bias. But let's back up. Forensically speaking, both direct and indirect network effects packaged in a self-reinforcing echo chamber. Okay, we all know about the social media echo chamber. You are surrounded by views that the algorithms think, basically, they want you to engage with content. And if there's content that, statistically speaking, they judge you unlikely to engage with, they don't show it to you. And one type of engagement is outrage. So the things that, say, Facebook tends to show you are either things that you agree with because, you have articulated such things yourself in the past, or more likely you have, what's the Facebook word for retweet? I don't know. It's been a while since I've been on Facebook. Repost stuff, You have passed on material in the past like this, forwarding or passing on or liking. These are, really good quality engagements from a social media standpoint. So stuff that you've engaged with like that in the past, they'll show it to you again. But to get you outraged, rather than show you nuanced, reasoned, articulate examples of people who disagree with you, they just show you the most shocking, the most, intensely irritating variety of the opinion you disagree with. So that we all come to do it over time. Some of us consciously, some of us completely oblivious to the underlying mechanisms, but we come to see the people who hold the views that we disagree with as the embodiment of everything we hate about the other side. And I'm sure you've encountered this. There are people that you know in real life or that you used to know, and they used to be normal people, which is to say individuals who had certain predictable viewpoints, but, were pretty their own thing most of the time. And then you see them posting stuff on social media and they're just a robot for a particular faction, saying the exact same things in the exact same words as the other robots in that faction. And you're like, what happened to that person? Anyway, network effects. Telephone. If there are only 2 telephones in the whole world connected by a single hard line, that will be a valuable thing to people at either end of that hard line. Suppose there are 2 cities. Well, let's say Milwaukee and San Antonio. And the only 2 telephones in the world are in Milwaukee and San Antonio. Milwaukee and San Antonio will grow into large, centers of commerce, and they will be strategically important. But every phone that you add to that network increases the value of every phone that's already on that network. In the world where there are only 2 phones, there's only one call you can make. You can call the other phone. But as soon as a third phone is in the network, you can suddenly call twice as many phones. The value of the network, or the potential value of it, has doubled for you. So it used to be called the fax machine effect when people used fax machines. The more people who own fax machines, the more valuable your fax machine becomes because there are more people that you can send and receive information from. That's a direct network effect. I actually had to go and look up what an indirect network effect is. And as far as I can tell, it's basically like the more people who own computers, the better market there is for software. There are things which are related to a particular product or service which get a boost from the direct network effect. So let's go back to Shelly Palmer's statement. There's a woman who she holds to a particular political conspiracy theory which is easily disprovable. And he wonders, where do her facts come from? Forensically speaking, both direct and indirect network effects packaged in a self-reinforcing echo chamber designed to fuel confirmation bias. Okay, the direct network effect I can get. Like, the more people that are on social media, the more opportunity there is for a particular belief system to gain adherence. And the more people who buy into that belief system, the stronger that belief system becomes because it has more adherence. It has more people who hold to it, who are exercising their own ability for confirmation bias to find new strategies for ignoring the disconfirming data or for finding new ways of articulating the confirming data. And that's, the people who are finding new ways to articulate a particular point of view, those are the minority. Most people are just regurgitating it. But still, that lends itself to direct network effects packaged in a self-reinforcing echo chamber. I think that phrase, packaged in a self-reinforcing echo chamber, is kind of window dressing. It doesn't really say a whole lot to me, even though I understand, the echo chamber effect. to fuel confirmation bias. I'm still really fuzzy on what he means by indirect network effects in this instance. And he goes in a different direction thereafter. He never spells it out. So if you have some notion as to what you think Shelly Palmer is talking about here, let me know. The other piece of writing is from Douglas Rushkoff. I have been corresponding with Douglas Rushkoff via email since the 1990s, like the mid-1990s, even before I worked at Amazon.com. I was corresponding with Doug Rushkoff. And since I started the podcast in 2006, I have interviewed him many times. And, when I lived in New York City, we crossed paths regularly, not in a planned way, just we were regularly at the same events and, we'd talk to one another. So, like Shelly Palmer, Douglas Rushkoff is very good at what he does, particularly in the follow-up, the bells and whistles. When you write something and you get it published, you share it with everybody that you can, So he also sends out email updates, which are quite good. And in one of them, the most recent one that came in today, he directed us to a piece that was published in The Guardian. We've spent the decade letting our tech define us. It's out of control. Doug Rushkoff. Now, I'm sure that he didn't come up with that title. That's an editor's choice there. This Guardian article from Doug Rushkoff is longer than the Shelly Palmer piece, but for the most part, he name drops Shoshana Zuboff early on in her book, Surveillance Capitalism, but then he goes on to say that the stuff she's talking about in that book, the choices by specific actors which really laid the groundwork for everything that's going on here, that stuff happened almost 20 years ago. So to stay focused on that stuff is to really miss what's happening now. And what's happening now is, what she's talking about in her book are the deliberate choices made by people at places like Google early on to focus on advertising and to discover that data collection, surreptitious data collection without permission, and then transformation of that data into prediction products which can be sold to interested parties was a very lucrative business model. And it is one that they went to great lengths to keep secret in the early days so that it could build up a head of steam and then, really be largely unchallengeable by the time people became aware of it, which seems to have worked pretty well. But in the last decade, and that's what this article is about, tech in the last decade, that stuff's old news. Really, tech now, it's not a platform, it's not devices, it's an environment, and it has environmental effects. And people who are doing business in this environment now, they are not making the fundamental choices to participate, to create surveillance capitalism or to create an environment which rigorously sorts us into different tribes and then hardens the walls between those tribes. That's already in effect. So people who are working in the field now, that's just the ante. That's just the buy-in. You are going to be participating in this activity, but you're not the architect of it. And another thing that he says early on, this is not the part that I'm going to read, but part that I think is really important. I'm 51. If you're half my age or younger, going online, that phrase probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you. You don't remember a time when, to check your email, you had to go sit at the computer and do some jiggery-pokery to get it to connect to the phone line and make this weird, series of beeps and clicks and hisses to let you know that the two pieces of equipment were now syncing up and allowing you to contact the internet, and download your data from the internet. We're just, well, I was going to reach for my phone. I'm talking into it right now. But, our phones are always with us, and there is no ritual, no dial-up getting online ritual that you have to engage in anymore. You're always online. Very likely you have multiple devices online at once that, you don't have to take any special action to get these devices on the internet. With your phone, you just pick it up, and you either put your finger on the fingerprint sensor or you position it so the camera can see your face and it just turns on and you're online. And even before you pick it up, maybe it chirped or it beeped or it made some little notification sound to alert you that there's something new that's come in that we've just found that's probably going to be of interest to you. I know you were doing something else, but it's time to engage with your phone again today. So yeah, it's a very different world. And that's the point that Douglas Rushkoff is making in the early part of this piece in The Guardian. Here's the bit that I want to read to you. The digital media environment is a space that is configuring itself in real time based on how the algorithms think we will react. They are sorting us into caricatured, machine language oversimplifications of ourselves. This is why we saw so much extremism emerge over the past decade. We are increasingly encouraged to identify ourselves by our algorithmically determined ideological profiles alone, and to accept a platform's arbitrary, profit-driven segmentation as a reflection of our deepest tribal affiliations. Wow, good stuff there. I mean, that's what I've been saying for the last 15 minutes, and he's packed it all into one little paragraph there. Good on you. And that is also the value of writing as opposed to just turning on the camera and jabbering. Continuing. Since 2016, we have summoned demons to embody and represent these artificially generated worldviews, Russian bots and meme campaigns and Cambridge Analytica. But though these may have amplified and accelerated the effect of the digital environment, that environment would have generated standing waves of cultural angst in primary colors, no matter what. And then he goes on to make the very common sense observation, but one that is deeply antithetical to, particular political tribes, that Donald Trump is not the architect of our current environment, of our current cultural animosity. He just stepped into a role that was ready-made. He didn't create it. And kicking him out of office, either by election or military coup, will not change the conditions that brought him to power. And until we address those underlying conditions, we are vulnerable to a demagogue. Personally, I think Donald Trump is a better president than Barack Obama. Barack Obama is a more likable character. He appeals to me more in terms of his personality, his vocabulary, his style of communication. Even, he likes Conan the Barbarian. So, even his media choices I find agreeable. And I don't connect with Donald Trump in any way that of the ways that I just described. But in terms of their actual actions, to me, Barack Obama's primary legacy is that he carried on certain threads from the Bush administration and pushed them farther than Bush ever could have. So, for example, the Bush administration under Cheney and Rumsfeld asserted that the United States could create this new classification of enemy combatant. An enemy combatant is not a soldier in an enemy country's army, because there are defined ways that you have to treat enemy soldiers, captured soldiers. Maybe you've heard of the Geneva Convention. The Bush administration asserted that if there is a non-state organization like Al-Qaeda that is actively antagonistic toward the United States, then people who are doing Al-Qaeda's business are our enemies, but they are not enemy soldiers, and they don't have any rights. We can do whatever we want to them. Waterboard them, assassinate them, whatever. Doesn't matter. The Obama administration took that a step further and said, even if they're U.S. citizens, they don't have any rights. If we determine that a U.S. citizen is acting on behalf of an enemy of this country, they can be assassinated. They don't have to be charged with a crime. We can just kill them without warning by drone strike. To me, that is the Obama administration legacy. What is the Trump equivalent? And I'm not here to defend Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him. I don't plan to vote for him. But the hysteria, Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. I see it regularly. And again, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't like the guy personally. In terms of his personal style, I don't like him. But as a president, okay, I had no intention of talking about the deep state when I started this video, but that's how these videos go when you don't write stuff down. So look forward to scripted videos from KMO in 2019. I have spoken.